Hello, everybody. To truly know me, you first need to understand my past and the journey that brought me here. In this episode, we'll take a walk down memory lane. My memory lane. Everything I share is the truth. No fabrications, no exaggerations. So, are you ready to dive into the world of Leniel Writes? If you are, buckle up and let's get started. In 1981, without revealing too much personal information, I was born to two Korean parents in Los Angeles, California. It was a Friday afternoon, and my mom had been in labor for hours. When it was finally go time, I entered the world. But I wasn't breathing, kicking, or crying. I was lifeless. The delivery room fell into stunned silence, filled with the horror that I might not have survived. The doctor and nurses sprang into action, placing me on the examination table. They began CPR, but as the doctor prepared to resuscitate me, he paused. A foul smell was coming from my mouth. Upon closer inspection, he discovered a foreign object lodged in my airway, blocking it completely. Using medical-grade tweezers, the doctor carefully removed the object and immediately began resuscitation. My mom, watching helplessly, described those moments as an eternity, a desperate wait for me to show any signs of life. Officially, I was declared dead. But then, by some miracle, I came back to life. Amazing, right? I don't know if it was the work of God, the skill of the medical team, or perhaps both. But it was truly a miraculous moment, a story of death and life literally intertwined. When people ask where I'm from, I always say Los Angeles. LA, SoCal, runs in my blood. I grew up in Koreatown, and life wasn't easy for my parents or for me. My father, God rest his soul, was originally from Mirang, South Korea. Mirang, located just northwest of Busan, is a breathtaking place. Known for its vibrant fall colors and picturesque countryside, it feels like something out of a historical movie about dynasties. I won't dive too deeply into Mirang, but I wanted to share a bit of my father's roots. He was the youngest of three siblings, though not much is known about his upbringing or his parents. There is a slice of truth from my book, The Undoing of July Park. My father's father passed away from an infectious disease, possibly typhoid. Initially, I thought it was yellow fever, but as I delved into the history of diseases prevalent during the post-Korean War era in rural areas like Mirang, I realized that yellow fever was rare. Typhoid, tuberculosis, typhus, dysentery, and Japanese encephalitis were more common during that time. My dad's mother died in a tragic car accident in Los Angeles. The story goes that she was struck by a drunk driver, and sadly she didn't survive. The driver was never caught. My father endured a difficult upbringing, emotionally scarred by these tragedies. His experiences shaped him deeply, and they've had a lasting impact on my life too. But that's a story for another time. My mom, who is still alive today, was born in Busan, South Korea, into a wealthy family, at least by the societal standards of the 1950s. Her father owned a successful construction business, and during that era in Busan, it was all about rebuilding and reviving the economy. My grandfather's business thrived, providing the family with a comfortable life. My mom was the middle child of 6 siblings. Her parents were devout Christians who raised their children with strong Christian values. My book touches on that background a little, though I leaned into her rebellious and adventurous side more. And adventurous she was. My mom often reminds me of the things she used to do in her youth. Hiking, backpacking, bicycling, running, swimming, playing sports, and cooking. I didn't know my grandfather very well, but I do have some memories of him. He used to smoke from a traditional wooden pipe. I think my mom still has it somewhere in her house. And he visited us frequently in Los Angeles. When he and my grandmother visited, they'd watch over my brother and me, taking us on long walks around Koreatown. By the way, I have a song dedicated to my grandmother that beautifully captures this memory. I'll drop the link in the description if you'd like to check it out. My grandfather passed away from lung cancer when I was very young. My grandmother, on the other hand, lived a long and remarkable life, reaching nearly 98 years. God rest her soul. She passed away just a few years ago. Before my brother was born, also in Los Angeles, though he tells people he's from Seattle, my mom experienced a heartbreaking loss. She had a miscarriage, and it devastated her. We could have had a sister today. One day we'll see you again, baby sister. After my brother arrived, life grew even harder. My mom had to take on extra work because my dad started gambling. It began small, as most addictions do, a little money here and there, win some, lose more, then play again to try to win it back. As the gambling escalated, so did the strain on our family. My mom taught me how to cook, clean, and take care of my baby brother. When my dad was away for long periods and my mom was working, I took care of the house. This quickly became our normal. What didn't become normal, though, was my dad's growing anger and short temper. Gambling has a way of changing a person. Another truth from my book comes from chapter 7. It was the hardest chapter to write. That night, my dad took physical abuse too far, and my mom ended up in the ER needing stitches. She didn't leave him right away. It took her over a year to plan her escape. Her plan was to move us to Washington State, where some of her siblings were already living and working. One weekend, when my dad went to Las Vegas, my mom seized the opportunity. She packed up our things, and we left Los Angeles behind. I don't clearly remember how we left Los Angeles, but according to my mom, we traveled by airplane. She left a note for my dad in the apartment, detailing where we were headed, and warning him not to come after us unless he changed his ways. Most of the move is a blur to me, but I vividly remember Burlington and Mount Vernon, Washington. I enrolled at Lincoln Elementary School and still remember my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Tolf. He was a kind and supportive teacher who truly valued his students. After Lincoln Elementary, I moved on to Bayview Middle School, while my brother attended Bayview Elementary. Bayview was where the bullying started. Those 2 years were painful, but I coped by figuratively taking the punches. I kept to myself, focused on my studies, and did my best to endure. I had a few friends, but none of those friendships lasted. When it was time for high school, I attended Burlington High School for 2 years. I joined the thespian club and the choir, and I actually did quite well in both. After my sophomore year, my mom decided to move us to Linwood, Washington. For a brief month, I attended Linwood High School, back when it was still at its original location where Costco now stands. Shortly after, I transferred one last time to Mountlake Terrace High School, where I graduated in 1999. I didn't plan to attend a traditional four-year university and didn't even bother applying during my senior year of high school. Instead, I went on a missions trip to India with a group of strangers. That experience was both eye-opening and heart-opening, and it had a profound impact on me. I'll share more about that in another episode. When I returned from India, my dad gave me two options: join the military or enroll in a four-year college. I asked, what about community college? That was not an option. So I chose to join the U.S. Air Force, and the rest is history. To keep it short, the military changed my life. At 18, I was just a kid with no real idea of how to navigate adulthood. But the Air Force showed me the way. I met some of the most incredible people, many of whom I'm still connected with today. I had the opportunity to travel the world, visiting countless places and experiencing cultures in ways I never imagined. One of my proudest achievements was becoming the youngest airman in my squadron to be promoted to operations management, especially when most of my squadron was deployed overseas. My time in the Air Force was transformative, and I loved every moment of it. The Air Force equipped me to face life's challenges head-on. After working a dead-end job for years, I decided to fulfill my dad's dying wish that I earn a 4-year degree. First, I completed my associates in pre-nursing, then a bachelor's in community psychology, and finally a master's certificate in human-centered design. I had started a master's program in human-computer and interaction design at UW Seattle, but life took a different turn. Getting my bachelor's, that was a journey. I worked graveyard hours just so that I could attend day classes. I remember sleeping in my car before class just so that I could stay awake during class. I did fall asleep in class too. Oh, it was rough. I got married, bought a house, and became a proud pet parent, eventually adding more fur babies to the family. I thought I'd finish the degree later, but I was already doing the work I loved, being a user experience researcher, a career I thrived in for 7 years. So, I settled for the master's certificate. Everything changed after I was laid off in 2024. The road since then has been steep. Application after application, rejection after rejection, and just a few interviews that never reached the final stages. It felt like staring into an empty well and scratching at the bottom despite knowing there's nothing left. But here I am today, sharing my journey with you. Thank you for tuning in to my very first podcast. For those of you listening for the first time, I appreciate you. Bless you. Come back soon for another episode of Leniel Writes.